In today's episode, I'm going to admit I've gone to the point where I'm so old. Rock and roll used to be a rebellion. Now it's a history class. Gerry, you are this guy who teaches fabulous history classes. You always come up with a fresh angle for history for the Tri-C Encore program. You've done game show history in the past, which is just fascinating because it involves culture and politics and so on and so forth, which every good history class should. Then you've surprised us once again by coming up with a history of rock and roll. And really you're focusing on the rock and roll capital of the world, Cleveland, Ohio.
Right. The name of the course is Cleveland Rocks, and so do you. And
as much as I can.
It's funny. When I was looking for a title for the course, I went into an AI site and I said, I'm teaching a course on Cleveland rock and roll history. I hit enter and I had 20 titles to choose from. And 18 of them were really good. So yeah, rocking and rolling.
That's awesome. So Chicago, I think, still holds the title of the northern headquarters for the blues. Detroit rightly holds the honor of hosting Motown and always will. Tell me what makes Cleveland and rock and roll so intertwined, the history?
Well, it started off with a disc jockey named Alan Freed. Alan Freed wasn't born here, but he was working at a radio station, and he started to play a new type of record, which was kind of a combination of other genres, and he called it rock and roll. And to this day, there's an argument among the so-called experts. Did he invent the term rock and roll, or did he use rock and roll, which was already used in the past, to describe the music he was playing?
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot, and we don't have AI to double check it, but it seems like they're right back there in the mid or early 50s. There was a blues country song that was sort of like "We're Rockin' and Rollin'" or something like that. Wasn't there something like that?
I believe so.
But somebody's going to email us and tell us, or it was this guy or whatever. But I don't know if they got that from Alan Freed or Alan Freed got that from them.
Well, whatever happened, he started what is considered the very first rock and roll concert at the Cleveland Arena in 1952. It was called the Moondog Coronation Ball, and they oversold the tickets, and it didn't go off quite the way they planned, but most historians consider that the very first rock and roll concert. And from there, it just took off. And I was looking for a new class to teach. My other classes, the numbers were dwindling. And I'm thinking, what else do I know a little bit about? And, I'm not a musician, but I've been following Cleveland rock and roll my whole life. I'm a native. I went to the clubs, the Old Agora, the Corral. I went to the Coliseum, the front row. And I'm thinking, you know what? I know rock and roll enough. I'm going to teach a course on Cleveland rock and roll history. And so far, it's turned out pretty good.
Well, the other thing about teaching it, it's old enough that we can now call these things historic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still young enough that there are people who lived it and made it here in Cleveland. And you have this talent, I guess, for finding these people and dragging them into the class. And here's living history talking about their antics and stuff like that. Tell me about some of the people you've brought into the class.
Well, I've been really lucky. I'm operating at about a 70% approval rate. When I approach somebody, I just say, hey, I teach a course on Cleveland rock and roll history. What are you doing this Friday? And
I got nothing.
Well, the first guy I'm going to talk about is Joe Vitale. Joe Vitale is a Canton native, and he has played with Joe Walsh, the Eagles. He was the primary drummer for Crosby, Stills, and Nash for 30 years.
Wow. He was on their road band or their recording band too, I suppose.
Right. He played on their records, and he was their touring drummer, and he came up from Canton, and he did a really, really, really good job. He brought up his wife. His wife actually wrote the book, but I got lucky there. And it's just, it's amazing how, and a lot of these people are really super down to earth. Joe, a blue collar guy, his father was a barber, and he really was down to earth, and the students loved him.
I bet he's got a lot of wild stories,
Well,
too.
he kept the book G-rated. I mean, let's face it, rock and roll can be pretty, I don't know, what's the word?
Raucous?
Yeah. But he wanted, his wife wrote the book with him, and he wanted to keep it on the PG-13 side, so to speak.
Probably you don't want to tell too many anecdotes in front of your spouse.
Right.
But Joe Walsh, just as a side note, doesn't he have a local connection to? Didn't he go to Kent State or something?
Right. He went, and that's where Joe Vitale and Joe Walsh met, was at Kent State. I don't think either one of them graduated, but that's neither here nor there. But that's where they met. They were in bands together.
That was the band before the Eagles.
Right. Joe was with the first band was called the Measles, of all things. I heard on the radio
Sounds
today
like Joe Walsh.
they're coming back. But then Joe got involved with the James Gang.
Yes.
And it was a 3-piece band. And from there, it was Barnstorm, which is where Joe Vitale came into play. And then Joe Walsh has been with the Eagles off and on since 1975. So, but they're very good friends. Whenever Joe Walsh goes on tour, Joe Vitale is his go-to drummer.
So when Vitale was, did I hear you correctly? He was also playing for the Eagles?
He was their second drummer. On one or two of their tours, they brought an extra drummer on board. I think it was late 70s, early 80s. A lot of bands have a second drummer.
Well, sure, or a percussionist or whatever,
right.
Because Don Henley was doing a lot of the vocals as well.
Right. Don Henley was a primary drummer, but on certain songs they would both play. And then in some songs, Henley would go up front and play guitar, and Joe Vitale would play the drums. So, like I said, super nice guy, and I'm hoping to have him back the next time I teach the class.
Yeah, that sounds like a great session.
Yeah.
Who else have you interviewed in these classes?
Well, I brought in the drummer from the Raspberries. The Raspberries were a Cleveland band from 1970 to 1975.
Go all the way.
Go all the way. I want to be with you tonight. Let's pretend. They kind of power pop was their subgenre, and unfortunately, Eric Carmen passed about a year and a half ago. But the drummer, his name is Jim Bonfanti, he's still rocking and rolling. He's in an oldies band. They play out of Lake County. I went to one of his gigs. I hit him up for an autograph at the intermission. I followed up with an email, and next thing you know, he's in my class. And he was actually the co-founder of the Raspberries. And, he talked about the local band scene back in the day, how him and Eric met, and how the band formed. And in any band, there's a little, I don't want to say tension, but there's creative differences. And, after 5 years, it was all over. And then they got back together for a reunion in 2004. They opened up the House of Blues. I was there. Nobody thought they would ever get together. But, they all kind of mellowed out and decided, hey, let's give it a shot. So he was really good. He, again, super down-to-earth guy. Just, it's incredible. These people put on their pants one leg at a time, just like we do.
Yeah, they're just regular human beings. It's just everybody knows about them.
Yeah.
Well, and Eric Carmen, I would imagine, would be open to doing that because it's not that he had a bad solo career, but it wasn't a very long solo career.
Well, the first album was really a classic album.
All by Myself.
All by Myself, and That's Rock and Roll, and so on. And then I think he had maybe 4 albums out. He got involved with some soundtracks, and I'll be honest, of the original 4 Raspberries, I think he's the only one that never had to get a day job. I guess when you're rocking and rolling and you're, young.
When you own the music and then you get the publishing and so on and so forth, you get the royalties.
Yeah. To see one definition of making it in music is not having to take on a day job.
There you go.
There's only 2 or 3 people that I know in the Cleveland area that have gone that route that can honestly look you in the eye and say, I play out 5 nights a week. I tour. Never had a day job.
Yeah, it's good work if you can get it, but you got to Did you ever talk to any of the Michael Stanley folks?
They're on my list. They're on my list. You know, all the people he played with over the years. Most of them still live in the area. I'd like to mix it up. I don't want to bring the same speaker in all the time, but no, I haven't quite tapped into that yet. I did bring in David Spiro. David Spiro cut his teeth. His dad was the producer on Upbeat. He held the cue cards up for his dad when he was 13.
Oh, wow.
And by the time he was 16 or 17, you know, he was more in tune with the music than his dad. He was helping book the bands, passing out the checks at the end and so on. And from Upbeat, he went on to be a disc jockey, and he's managed 20 different acts. He just wrote an autobiography, and I've had him in several times. He is so good. War stories like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of, like, he wasn't involved with the Coliseum.
Not directly. That's one of the other things I do. I talk about the venues. I talk about the defunct venues. The Coliseum in Litchfield only lasted 20 years. There is a woman that I met along the way. She worked at the Coliseum from the day it opened to the day it closed. I bring her in if she's available, and she's got stories. Some of them are even true, right?
You got to share the Willie Nelson story. I think that's just so cute.
I'm going to hold off on that because I can't tell it as good as her. I've been trying to get her to write a book about the Coliseum because there is a book out about the Front Row. I brought the lady that wrote the Front Row theater book, and she was so good. The Front Row, for those of you that maybe don't remember, that was a theater in the Round. It was in Highland Heights.
About 3,000 seats.
3,000 seats, and there wasn't a bad seat in the house. That was in Highland Heights, whereas Tri-C East is in Highland Hills. A lot of times the two get confused, and they're 10 miles apart. But I bring her in. She worked booking the acts and so on, and she just wrote the book. It's been out only about a year. And so I bring her in, and she talks all about the Front Row. Front Row wasn't just rock and roll. They brought in comedians and speakers, you know, retired presidents and so on. But
I saw plays there. Yeah. I saw... this was back in the 80s. Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie did a retroactive folk thing for the whole evening. It was just them. There was no opening act or anything, and they just sat there and played acoustic guitars and reminisced about the old times. And it was very. A very intimate setting. You felt like no matter where you were, because the stage was round and it rotated, that's why they called it the Front Row, obviously. But you felt like you were very near them. It was very, very personal.
Right. I also talked about some of the defunct clubs. There was the Agora. There's still the Agora, but it's not like the old one that was at 24th in Chester. The Corral was in Olmsted Township. The Mad Hatter. So we talk about, you know, the clubs and so on. The other thing, the other guy brought in the go-to publication to find out where to go for the weekend.
Before the worldwide interweb.
Was the Scene magazine.
That's right.
This thing came out every Thursday.
And it was free.
It was free. It was, well, there's a lot of ads in it. So, but at one point, it was the go-to publication to see what bands are playing. It reviewed albums. It reviewed concerts.
I was going to say, there was like very decent entertainment journalism in there. It was above board.
Right. But the guy that was the editor for 19 years, his name is Mark Holan, and I brought him into the class, and he has interviewed 500 rock and rollers. He's reviewed maybe 250 concerts, and he actually started off delivering the paper on Thursdays, and then one day he went up to one of the managers and said, "Can I review an album?" They gave him an album to review. Next thing you know, he was the editor. The Scene magazine, by the way, still exists, but it's not quite the same. It was purchased by an outside entity, and the focus is no longer on rock and roll. It's more on current events, politics, a little bit of restaurant reviews. But back in the day, it was, I've got a stack of them at home like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, yeah. I bet there were some good articles in some of those
Absolutely.
editions.
Absolutely. And by the way, the person on the front cover is Ben Orr. Ben Orr of the Cars.
Local boy?
Parma native. He unfortunately, he passed away relatively young.
Who's going to drive you home?
Right. The Cars actually were out of Boston, but Ben cut his teeth in Cleveland. He was in the house band on Upbeat. And actually, the fellow that wrote the book about Ben Orr calls into my class. So if they can't come in, I have them call in. Once in a while, I get them to Zoom in if we can get the technology to cooperate.
Right.
Yeah.
What about who is Pat Benatar's guitar player? Neil
Giraldo. He is a Parma native, and
Yeah.
I'm working on him. Next year, actually this year, is Parma's 200th birthday. It's the 250th birthday of the USA, but it's Parma's 200th birthday, and I think the city of Parma is trying to bring him in to be the grand marshal at their parade, and hopefully it lines up with a Friday encore class so he can come into my class. But I've been working on Mr. Giraldo. The more important you are, the less likely you'll be in the white pages. So it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to track these folks down.
Well, that's what the Worldwide Interweb is for,
Yeah.
right? It's doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
The other unique aspect that I really like about your history classes is the sports history.
Yeah, I've been teaching that class off and on. What I do is I look at the history of the three major sports, the Cavaliers, the Browns, and the Indians/Guardians. This time around, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to cover some of the sports that kind of get, I don't want to say swept under the rug, but they don't get the ink that the major three sports get. I'm going to talk about hockey, soccer.
Sea monsters.
The Monsters.
Okay.
But named after they were called the Lake Erie Monsters for a while, but then they changed it to Cleveland. I think they should have kept it at Lake Erie. But we're going to talk about distance running, golf, bowling, some of the sports that the people that participate in are really passionate about. Yet, in this day and age, it seems like the mainstream sports, they cover the big three, and the other sports kind of just don't get the ink they used to get.
Aren't we supposed to be getting a soccer team coming to Northeast Ohio in a little bit, and women's basketball? And
the Rockers, the Cleveland Rockers were the WNBA team about 15 years ago.
Ties in with our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And they just announced a few months ago that they're going to resurge the name. They're already selling season tickets for it and everything. So I want to, pay attention to some of the sports that just don't get the ink, because the people that participate, they're just as dedicated as the football, basketball, and baseball players.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you ever get any old ball players to come in and talk to you?
I've had Vern Fuller of the Indians. I've had Dick Shafrath from the Browns. Gary Collins, who was the hero of the '64 NFL championship game, he calls in. He lives in Maryland, but he calls in, and he's really good. Back then, there wasn't as many people on the roster, and he was the punter and wide receiver. And whenever I interview him, I always ask the same question: Did you get a contract for both? And he goes, heck no. Art Modell, one contract, and you
just went out there, and those guys, the punt and the point after try have become an art form all unto themselves, right. A specialized thing. But back then, they just had a lineman go out there and pooch it.
Right. Yeah, it's a different ball game. But and those guys all had jobs in the off season.
Yep.
I know there's no quizzes on Encore officially, but unofficially, I give the students a little quiz, and I have some old time players on one side of the sheet and their off season jobs on the other.
What's the oddest combination you ever saw?
Well, Rocky Colavito worked at his father-in-law's mushroom farm. A lot of the guys sold insurance. As a matter of fact, the one player told me when he got, when he made the big team, they would hand him a playbook, and they would hand him the insurance book, because he was going to study the insurance business for the off-season job. But I'm having a time of my life doing this. I really enjoy doing it, and it seems like the students are enjoying it too.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of us, just going back to rock and roll for a little bit, I'm of that age, but back in the 80s where we were all rooting for Michael Stanley to hit the big time stage, the worldwide stage or whatever. We all wanted it. The songs were well written and very commercial. And did you have any insight retroactively, like what happened?
David Spiro was his manager for a while, and he could talk all about that. I mean, Michael was big in Cleveland, and there were pockets throughout the country that he was also big in. I think St. Louis and maybe in Florida, but in other parts like New York and California, he didn't quite make it there, and that's where people want to go to make it. That's big time. That's big time.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Well, the other, while I'm thinking about it, they didn't last very long, but they were very influential on the stage for a while. And they were an MTV staple for a while. Was it Men in Hats?
Men in Hats. You mean Men at Work or Men in Hats?
No, Men in Hats. But they had the red hats and.
Were they a Cleveland band?
They were out of Canton, I thought.
I'm expanding. It is Cleveland, but I talk about Akron and Canton.
Whip it good.
That was Devo.
But they had the hats.
Yeah, they wore had flower pots on their hats. I'm working on them because I think they reformed a couple of years ago. These guys, I mean, there's a lot.
But they were big on MTV for a while.
Yeah.
They were, and they're local or regional or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go finish your thought about you're trying to get some of these guys in.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I tried to bring them in if they live out of the area. I mean, we could always do a phone conference call or a Zoom. But I'm having a blast, and I can't wait till the next semester.
There we go, Gerry. I look forward not just to these classes, but to the next little niche of history that you dig out. You're a creative guy. I love your classes. Thanks for being here.
Okay. Thanks, Ted.
When we continue the conversation, when you come up with your next cool class.
Okay. Thanks, Ted.